So, Chancellor, we want to jump right into these questions here. First off, did you fire President John Flores?
Actually, it's not really a departure from the NMSU. It is a retreat back to the faculty, which has been part of his contractual arrangement from the very beginning. So that was always part of the plan, that in the event that he no longer would be president, he would have an opportunity to have a tenured track position in the College of Agriculture, which is where he's going to go after his sabbatical.
Is this change in leadership in response to the staff and student outcry, their frustration with university leadership?
You know, what I can say is it's not directly related to that. This is something that President Flores and I have been talking about literally since the day we got here. You know, this is a little bit of a non-traditional approach, the way that we have essentially organized ourselves to really put the university on a different trajectory. And so we had been talking about this really for some time. Now, we did expect that it would go the entire duration of our 5-year contracts. Both of us have 5-year contracts. So we kind of expected that, but we didn't expect pandemic. We didn't expect all of the meltdown and the financial crisis and all of those things. And so many of the things that we put in place were actually things that we could actually get done more quickly, primarily because we had stimulus money from the federal government that allowed us to make investments that we wouldn't have otherwise been able to make. So this gave us the opportunity to accelerate progress, and we actually, I think, completed much of what we wanted to complete a little bit earlier than we had thought. So this was a kind of a timing thing, and you know, by mutual agreement, we decided that this was the time to do this.
See, our line of thought is if someone is performing their role really well and you're meeting all your goals, exceeding your goals, why change it up if everything is going well?
Yeah, that's a great question. The real question is that what we know is that our system needs to be much more efficient and much more effective in the way that we do things. A lot of streamlining needed to do. So when Dr. Flores and I first got here, I took the role of being externally focused so that we could bring in more revenues and do a variety of things. Dr. Flores took the role of doing internal, restructuring and understanding what our goals and objectives are and putting ourselves in a place where we can measure progress, and much of that has been accomplished. So now we're in a position where we can retreat back to a more streamlined version, combining the Chancellor's office and the President's office, and do that effectively and efficiently, even though it wasn't something that we would have wanted to do for the long range.
In a normal situation, when staffers take a sabbatical, they're eligible for 60% of their current salary, and the former president will make $450,000 for the next year while he is on sabbatical. So we want to know, is this a true sabbatical or is this severance pay?
Well, it's a true sabbatical, first of all. Second of all, it is something that was developed at the beginning of this cycle through the contractual negotiations with the previous regents. So the regents put in place a contractual mechanism, and they were concerned that maybe a new set of regents might not fully embrace the idea of this strategic investment in two leaders, and so they put into it a fairly comfortable safety net, if you will. And so that's what this is about. That is precisely what we did, is we exercised a clause in the contract that exists, and that's what it says. It says a year's worth of sabbatical, which will be paid out at the president's salary, and then after that he returns to a salary that is commensurate with the highest paid in the discipline and the department of the agricultural college where he will reside.
With your other faculty members, when they do take sabbatical, you require them, upon return to the university, to work for at least a year with NMSU. Otherwise, they'll have to pay back their sabbatical money that they've been paid. Will you hold the former president to those same standards?
We're going to follow what the contract says. And what the contract says is you've got that sabbatical, you've got that opportunity to return to faculty. It has no provisions, as you suggest, relative to what others might do. It's a very specific contractual relationship with an individual that the previous regents really entered into. So we're going to follow that.
So does the contract require him to stay at the university for at least a year after returning from sabbatical?
It does not. I think he, as with any faculty member, once they've satisfied all their contractual constraints, then at that point they're free to do whatever they believe is in their best interest.
When will NMSU stop paying the former president?
after the year sabbatical, that will be the time, or at such time that he decides that he wants to take another job or to go seek other employment. So there are ways in which that liability for the university essentially goes away. Then that depends on what President Flores chooses to do.
Do you have the month that he will stop being paid that $450,000 salary?
Well, it'll start February 7th, which is the time after the transition period, and then it'll go for 1 year, so February 7th of 2023.
His contract was up in June 2023 anyway, right?
That's correct.
So some would argue that perhaps you're just running out his contract. What would you have to say to that?
It's no different than what we do with coaches. It's simply a contractual relationship with an individual, and that is done rather routinely at the universities at the executive level, as we have now. And it's every one of them is a little bit slightly different, but in this case, it is precisely what was agreed to up front.
If you're paying the former president his full salary anyway to work for the next year, why not have him just keep his current role and earn that money versus just being on this sabbatical where he makes $500,000 a year?
That's also a good question. I think what we're finding is that we're in a position now where we have really taken advantage of the skill set that President Flores brought and the skill set that I'm bringing. It's appropriate to combine those and to be more streamlined both in our decision making and in the way in which we delegate authority. I think it's important that our organization be empowered. We now have a roadmap. We've got metrics. We've got ways in which we can measure progress and hold people accountable. So we now have the tools by which we can actually manage our workforce much more efficiently. I expect our overall administrative costs will continue to go down, and by doing it this way, we'll be able to accelerate that process.
I'm sure you are aware that the university, the regents have received criticism from staffers and the public hiring 2 people for a role that one person held previously. We interviewed that person today. We interviewed Gary, and there has been criticism that this has been a large investment of tax dollars, what some would say a waste of money, hiring 2 people for the position of 1. What would you say in response to that?
Well, I can say I look at this as a strategic investment in the future of New Mexico State University by bringing in a level of strategic thinking and competence that allowed us to get a strategic plan, to provide the necessary framework for how we will progress going forward, and then to begin to measure progress against that plan. So I think in all of those cases, we've accomplished what we came to do. Whether or not going forward would continue to serve the same purpose, in my judgment, it was let's get lean and mean and let's start the process of making sure that we are very efficient and as well as effective in the way we do things going forward. I will admit there has been some confusion as what's the roles of these 2 people versus the role of the 1 individual. I think that has gotten a little bit in the way on occasion, and so this is a way to kind of relieve that pressure and that stress. And so, and where that isn't the driving force, it is something that I think we'll take full advantage of.
Is the university walking back its plan from 2018?
Absolutely not. The plan that we had that we now call Leads 2025 is still alive and well. In fact, if anything, what we've recognized is that we need to accelerate progress, which is what we're doing. We're recognizing that the pandemic has given us new opportunities, again, for some investments that we weren't able to make in the past on critical maintenance and things that are just basic infrastructure. And now we can focus our attention on the mission objectives of our land-grant institution.
Finally, while the university requires other faculty members on sabbatical to document that they are doing work for the university, providing valuable research for New Mexico, will you be requiring that the former president submit any proof that he is in fact conducting research work for that almost $500,000 that he'll make over the next year?
Yeah, one of the things that I think we'll continue to do is to tap into his expertise and his capabilities. He is a world-class scientist, and that's something that I'm very, very appreciative of. We've got some initiatives in agriculture that are going to be very exciting going forward with our ag modernization strategy. I think he'll be a big part of that going forward. He's on a couple of panels with the National Academies of Engineering. It's things that I think are at the national level have great value. I have no doubt he's a man of great integrity, and I think he'll do the things that are necessary to essentially earn his keep.
And I ask this question because our viewers are going to be asking, what is he going to be doing for the next year? Can you assure them that he will be earning that $500,000 a year, or will he be just collecting a paycheck?
Well, that's a great question. I think right now what it amounts to is we are going to make sure that the investments that we've made continue to pay off. I think they already have paid off in some ways. The actual requirements of what you do while you're on sabbatical, or while, again, this contractual relationship continues to be satisfied based on what was expected at the beginning, is something that I think we all will pay attention to. I have no doubt that President Flores will continue to make exceptional scientific contributions. How those will take place, I can't give you an exact way to do that. Will he be held accountable? That is something that professionals at his level, in fact, are, I think, very, very anxious to do, is to show that they are not just, essentially taking on a windfall that is not going to add any value. I believe that he will demonstrate his value in that process.
So I have your word, Chancellor, that the former president will not just be collecting a $500,000 paycheck this next year.
I'm pretty confident that he will not just be collecting a paycheck sitting on the beach. That's not who he is. That's not what he does.